It's alive. The beast is alive. Run while you can. Run for safety. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava.
Can you play?
Kunja Bihari.
No. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, this 11th canto, which is entitled, I forget, General History. Why General History beats me? Chapter 25, the three modes and beyond, and we're on text 11, right?
Четем от Шримад Бхагаватам 11 песен, 25 глава, която се казва Трите гуни отвъд, текст 11.
Should I read the Sanskrit? Yada ashisha shasya
Yada ashisha ashasya
mam bhajeta svakarmabhihi
mam bhajeta svakarmabhi
tam raja prakritim vidyat
tam raja prakritim vidyat
hamsamashasya tamasam.
samashasya tamasam.
We just read the translation or word for word also?
Yeah, I can translate the word for word because it's we after that after the reading somebody transcribes because we use it as translation. So you can say the Sanskrit now, Sanskrit English and then the translation.
Yada when
Когато
ashishaha
Ашишаха
benedictions
благослови
ashasya
Ашася
hoping for
надявайки се за
mam me.
Many.
What did you say? Many.
Men.
Bhajeta.
Bhajeta.
A person worships.
Личността обожава.
Swakarmabhihi.
Свакармабхи.
By his duties.
От неговите за своите задължения.
Tam. That.
Това.
Rajaha prakritim.
Раджа пракратим.
A person situated in the mode of passion.
Човек гуната на страста.
Vidyat.
Видят.
One should understand.
Трябва да разбере.
Razbere means to understand. Razbirati. Himsam. Violence.
Насилие.
Ashasya.
Ашася.
Hoping for.
Надежда за.
Tamasam.
Тамасам.
A person in the mode of ignorance.
Личността в гуната на невежество.
Translation. When a person worships me by his prescribed duties with the hope of gaining material benefit, His nature should be understood to be in passion. When one worships me with the desire to commit violence against others, he is in ignorance.
Природата на човека е в страстта, когато не обожава с предписаните си задължения с надеждата да получи материална полза. А ако някой не обожава с желание да извършва насилие срещу други, е в невежество.
No purport, so I guess read on, right? Sattvam rajastamaiti guna jivasya naiva me chitta jayastu bhutanam sajjamana nibadyate. The three modes, should I just... Yeah. The three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, influence the living entity, but not me. Manifesting within his mind, they induce the living entity to become attached to material bodies and other created objects. In this way, the living entity is bound up.
Трите гони на материалната природа, добро, страст и невежество, влияят на живото същество, но не на мен. Проявявайки се в ума, те карат живото същество да се привърже към материалното тяло и другите сътворени обекти. По този начин живото същество е обвързано.
Purport. The living entity is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, having the tendency to be overwhelmed by the Lord's illusory material energy. The personality of Godhead, however, is the absolute controller of illusion. Illusion can never control the Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, is the eternal object of service for all living beings, who are eternally servants of the Lord. The three modes of nature manifest within the material energy. When a conditioned soul adopts a material mentality, the modes exert their influence within the jurisdiction of that mentality. But if one purifies one's mind in the devotional service of the Lord, the modes of nature can no longer act upon him, since they have no influence on the spiritual platform.
Пояснение. Живото същество е междинна енергия на Върховния Бог. Има склонността да бъде повлияно и завладяно от иллюзорната материална енергия на Бога. Личността на Бога обаче е абсолютният властелин на иллюзията. Иллюзията никога не може да контролира Бога. Така Върховният Бог Шри Кришна е вечният обект на служене за всички живи същества, които са вечно слуги на Бога. Трите гони на материалната природа се проявяват в материалната енергия. Когато обусловената душа приеме материален менталитет, гуните налагат тяхното влияние в юрисдикцията на този менталитет или в обхвата на този менталитет. Но ако човек пречисти ума си в предано служение на Бога, гуните на природата повече не действат върху него, тъй като нямат влияние върху духовната платформа. Или нямат влияние на духовната платформа.
Okay, so you have to open your shoulders. Because unless they're open, you're going to go like that. I can see, like, it's not good. Really not good.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm disturbing you now, but I thought it was important. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karati Vachalam Pangum Langate Girim Yat Kripata Mahabande Shri Gurum Dina Taranam Chakalpatarubhasya Kripasindubheva Japatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I have two thoughts that I'd like to bring up for discussion. And how we're going to do this? Will I speak and you translate?
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to slow it down ridiculously.
We can start like that, and then we can continue somehow in English. Because if everybody has to say, then it will be difficult to translate everything. But at least in the beginning, you can say something for the audience who know Bulgarian.
All right. So there are two things that jump into my face as I read these verses and this purport by Srila Prabhupada. So let's first see what are the elements of the story that we have thus far in today's discussion.
Кои са първо елементите на историята, която четем?
So we have a soul or souls, and then we have God, and then we have three modes of material nature.
Тук са описани душите, Бога и гуните на природата.
And there's an interesting relationship here being described between each one of them.
И тук между всички се обяснява едно интересно взаимоотношение между тях.
If we were to put it on a chart, we would place the soul or souls in the central position, and then God above or to the left, doesn't matter. Oh, let's put it up. Okay, put God above and the modes below.
Ако си представим така една схема, душата може да поставим по средата, Бога над тях и под са гуните или природата.
And so now, every time you want to make something interesting, you create attention. So here we have attention.
Когато искаме нещо да бъде интересно, трябва да има някакво напрежение. И тук това е напрежение.
Yeah, news agencies make money by making up tensions.
Агенциите, новинарските, те така правят пари, като създават напрежение.
They're really good at it.
Те са много добри в това.
Looks like it's going to happen. Will it happen? Oh my God, it's happening. Oh my goodness, it happened.
Изглежда, че ще се случи, но наистина се случи.
And what happened doesn't matter. It's just some tension.
Каквото се случва няма толкова значение, някакво напрежение.
The tension here is, as presented in the Bhagavatam, is the position of the soul.
Но тук напрежението, позицията на душата.
The soul, when under the influence of the modes, is pulled away from God.
Душата под влияние на гуните е отдалечена от Бога.
And towards the objects, like literally physical objects is mentioned in here.
И обърната към физическите обекти, както споменато тук.
And when the soul makes the connection with God, then it pulls away from the modes, is freed from the modes, pulls away from the objects, and it's pulled towards Krishna.
Когато душата се свърже с Бога, се отдръпва от гуните, от обектите, материалните и така се обръща към Кришна.
So I hope you can see the tension. You know, you have like two polarities, and then you have something like two large magnets, you know, one above, one below, and then in the center you have a piece of iron that you're wondering where it's going to go.
Може да си представим два силни магнита от двете страни и по средата има желязо, което е привлечено от двете.
Yeah, it can't go in both directions at the same time. It goes in one direction or the other.
Не може едновременно в двете посоки, или в едната, или в другата.
And the central position is an unstable position.
И тази позиция по средата е неустойчива.
That's why the tension.
И затова има и напрежение.
Because you have two sources of energy exerting their influence over the soul.
Защото два източника на енергия влияят на душата.
Of course, later on in the Bhagavatam, we will see that the soul, that a person, him or her itself, whatever the soul is in creation, it's female. Oh yeah, in English it's genderless, I think. Yeah. What was I saying? That later on in the Bhagavatam we will see that the soul actuates the influence of the modes.
По-късно в Бхагаватам научаваме как душата всъщност създава влиянието или осъществява влиянието на гуните.
It's almost like the soul turns on the modes.
Или с други думи душата ги включва, задвижва ги.
And then by reading the literature, we see that the soul also actuates the God magnet.
А също четейки шастра, ние научаваме, че душата също задвижва и поставя началото на влиянието на магнита на Бога.
The energies are there and they're offering themselves, but the soul it's up to us what we're going to actuate.
И тези енергии съществуват, но душата решава коя да задвижи.
Yeah, to the point that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita a few times that it's our own responsibility.
До там, че Кришна казва в Бхагавад Гита, това е наша лична отговорност.
The polarity and the energies are there, but we are to be blamed for whatever the outcome of our situation happens to be.
Енергиите са там с тяхното влияние, но единствено ние сме отговорни за ситуацията, в която се намираме.
And then one thing here is very clear. Well, first of all, of these three elements, the modes are not described as living entities.
Първо, от тези три елемента гуните не са описани като живи.
But just as forces, and I don't know what kind of forces, some kind of impersonal forces.
Но просто като сили, някакъв вид имперсонални.
Yeah. Whereas soul and God are actually persons.
Докато душите и Бога са личности.
So that means that God has a volition and the soul has volition.
С други думи, и Бога и душите имат свободна воля.
Slobodna voля? No, but volition, yes. That's a difference. If you had said free will, then that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah, volition is ability to choose.
Or избор.
You have. Yeah. Because when you say free will, because our will is tainted. You know,
не точно да сега е свободна, специално за душата, защото е обременена тази свобода.
Good I speak Croatian. We could have just ruined the generations.
One word.
This is also a very important element in this story, right? That the soul and God are entities, whereas living entities, whereas the modes are forces.
И това е също важно, да разберем как те са живи личности, душата и Бога, докато гуните са сили.
And here comes a really, really important element, and that is that the God and soul are not in the same category! Exclamation mark.
И това е. Трябва да обърнем голямо внимание, че и Бога и душите не са в една и съща категория. Удивителен.
God is in superlative category, and we're in the inferior category.
Богът е в превъзходната категория, ние сме в ниша категория.
This is extremely important.
И това е изключително важно.
If we don't have this categorization, we do not have religion.
Ако нямаме това разграничение, тази категоризация, тогава не може да има и религия.
We don't have transcendence.
Няма трансценденталност.
We find that humans constantly have a need to be pulled out of their miserable tiny existence.
Ние откриваме, че човешките същества имат постоянно нужда да бъдат измъкнати от тяхното мизерно съществуване.
Conditioned living entities get a breather by going to a soccer game.
Get what?
A breather.
A breather.
Yeah, like a break.
Те могат да си поемат дъх, благословените души, или да имат малко почивка, които отидат примерно на футболна игра.
Почивка. Yeah. Починак in Croatian means a break, rest. Yeah. And at a football game, they're pulled out of their own little life, you know, and that they're pulled into a larger mass that are all singing together, experiencing a greater reality than their own little tiny one.
И когато отидат така на матч, те се откъсват от малкия си древнав свят и се потапят в една атмосфера с много други хора, които пеят и са в друга потопени в друга атмосфера.
And this is intoxicating.
И това е опияняващо.
I mean, by year 2020, soccer fans have, become a little more civilized. But, not too long ago, a couple of decades, 2, 3, 4 decades ago, these fans used to kill each other.
Сега, през 2020 година са малко по-цивилизовани, но преди няколко десетилетия тези фенове се убиваха един друг.
Yeah, with great relish.
Наслаждавайки се на това.
Why? Because of a need, among other things, because of a need to be part of something greater than myself.
Защо? Заради тази нужда да бъдем част от нещо по-велико от нас.
And, but the soccer game experience is, it's just a tiny substitute for the real thing.
Но разбира се, това преживяване по време на матч е някакво малък незначителен заместител на истинското нещо.
And the real thing is, as the Bhagavad Gita says, that we be pulled into a large world of God.
Истинското нещо, според Бхагавад Гита, е да бъдем издърпани в това много по-голямо, огромно нещо на Бога.
I don't know if you have ever tried to picture the large world of God.
Не знам дали сте се опитвали да си представите огромния свят на Бога.
You see, in your own little world, there's just you. It's a reductionist process where there's just you.
В нашия собствен малък свят, това сме само ние.
And even if you include other people in that world, they're merely means to your own ends, means at the end it's only you in the picture.
Но дори ако включим други хора в нашия малък свят, в крайна сметка сме ние, защото ние ги включваме те са просто средства да постигнем нашите цели.
It's a murderous process of reduction.
Това е така един убийствен процес на редукция.
Ultimately, this is a process of self-destruction, by the way. But
в крайна сметка това е един процес на себеунищожение.
Yeah, and in the world of God, you get a picture that God is everything, and everything is in God.
Но в света на Бога има тази картина, че всичко е в Бога и Бога е във всичко.
So wherever you go, you're conscious of a really, really, really large reality.
И където отидеш, ще си осъзнат за наистина една огромна необятна реалност.
A world where it's not just you, there's all living entities.
И там в този свят не си само ти, а има безброй живи същества.
There are the demigods.
Има полубогове.
All kinds of forces.
Всякакъв вид сили.
There are the loving exchanges between you and God.
Има любовни взаимоотношения между теб и Бога.
Between you and all of the living entities.
Между теб и всички живи същества.
I mean, this is a truly cosmic picture.
Това е истинска космическа картина.
To hell, even larger than cosmic pictures.
Даже още по-голяма от космическата.
Yeah, it's a huge world.
Това е необятен свят.
And according to the Bhagavad Gita, the process of yagya pulls you out of your miserable tiny world into this large world of God.
И според Бхагавад Гита процесът на ягия е този, който ни издърпва от нашия малък незначителен свят в необятния свят на Бога.
And so, therefore, trying to bring God on your platform in the name of religion is a destruction of transcendence.
И унищожение на трансценденталността е, ако се опитаме да принизим Бога и да принизим религията до това, той да влезе в нашия малък свят.
That is yet another destructive, actually self-destructive process.
Това е един друг унищожителен и себеунищожителен процес.
Another reductionist process. Let's reduce everything, even God, to nothing.
Нека друг такъв редукционистски процес, да сведем всичко до нас, дори и Бога.
Yeah. But let's be honest, when we look at the world, we quickly see that we're tiny beings,
Но ако сме честни и се огледаме в света, ще разберем, че сме много малки същества.
And when we take it from there, from the experience that we already have, a need for transcendence naturally manifests.
И когато обаче осъзнаем това, ще усетим нуждата от трансценденталност. Тя естествено ще възникне.
And the transcendence here is defined as the escape from the grip of the modes of material nature.
И тук трансценденталността е дефинирана като освобождаване от хватката на тези голи на природата.
And now you can imagine, the fury of devotional fury of Srila Prabhupada when he would hear that Mayavadi concepts that God is under the modes of nature.
Затова може да си обясним трансценденталният гняв на Шрила Прабхупад, когато е чул майяварите да казват, че Бога е под влияние на гуните на природата.
Mode of goodness, but still the modes.
Да, разбира се, под влияние на гуната на доброто, но все пак.
Again, this sick need of the conditioned soul to reduce everything to myself and then ultimately nothing.
Отново същата тази болестно състояние, нужда на обусловената душа да сведе всичко, да го редуцира до него, до себе си, дори и Бога.
A destructive process.
Това е един деструктивен процес.
Self-destructive.
Себе-деструктивен.
To quote Camus.
Стил на Камю.
Yeah, the verse says, the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, influence the living entity, but not me. Very important thing.
Тук това е много важно. Стиха казва, гоните на природата, доброто, страстта и нещото влияят върху живото общество, но не върху мен.
Manifesting within his mind, they induce the living entity to become attached to material bodies and other created objects.
Проявяйки се в ума, те карат живото същество да се привържи към материални тела и други създадени, сътворени обекти.
In this way, the living entity is bound up.
Така живото същество става обвързано.
Well, I guess I can leave it at that. I mean, there's one more topic, but on my mind. Something about the nature of the modes, but I think we'll leave that as for tomorrow, let's see.
Ще оставим това за утре.
Okay, I'm done. How about you?
Yeah, my thoughts go in the direction of the last point, that if one purifies the mind, because it was said, chitta ja, the modes appear, they're born in the mind. Actually, they induce the living entity through the mind. So if the mind is purified through service, devotional service, then the modes doesn't act anymore. They have no influence.
Yeah.
And so when does this happen? It seems like, okay, you practice devotional service, the mind is purified, and then no more modes. But as you said, the magnets pull, and then you said you push the button. That's how you actuate them.
Yeah.
You choose.
Yeah.
So it's not that you push once the button of the modes and then you're completely bound, and then once the button...
No, we're like...
Yeah, we're playing around, testing gas.
And not pressing all the way, just kind of like...
Little bit. Yeah, that's why Kapila Dev describes in detail how there is devotional service within the modes.
Correct, yeah.
In the third canto.
Yeah.
And then with endless variety, basically, but he gives the basic. If you're predominantly influenced by the ignorance, then it will come out as, violence and anger and envy, like that.
Yeah.
But all three are, the common is that you have this bina drik, you have this separate vision from God. It's again, your small world.
Yeah.
I was thinking why we see, I mean, not why, but it seems not so simple or direct. Yes, I'm practicing devotional service, I'm chanting, I'm following principles and whatever, worship, reading.
That's a materialistic concept of practice.
And still, my mind is
no, but that's a.
full of
You see, that's a common. Sorry, I cut you off.
That was the point, you know. So that's why we have so many problems, you know, devotees in between themselves or in our personal life. We are fighting with the modes, obviously. But sometimes maybe not realizing. And trying to justify it with quotes. But it's obvious that it's envy or anger coming out.
Well, a couple of things. One thing is that this kind of concept of this kind of conceptualization of what it means to practice Krishna consciousness is a materialistic one. It's bahirmukha, you know, and it's a huge enemy. Like, I'm dressed like this, I have a tilak, you know, I have chanted Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says you could be chanting for millions of lifetimes, man. Like that's like eternity, you know. It's like almost eternity, yeah. So that's just bahirmukha, you know. Going through the motions of Krishna consciousness. And to build up on our yesterday's conversation, you know, these are complex experiences that, you know, cannot be reproduced just like that, you know. You have to, your consciousness has to gain a certain quality, and as it gains that quality, you understand, and as it lacks that quality, you don't understand. And Krishna consciousness, and you are under the modes. And then, in regards to the modes, in regards to the modes, there is also the process of conditioning. Like, once you have actuated a mode, or it's never just one thing, it's really a combination of all three modes, then longer you have been under the influence of the modes, longer will it have effect on you, even after unplugging from the circuit of the modes, you know. The conditioning remains. And the third thing, which I wasn't going to discuss today, but now that you brought this up, it's very relevant. And that is, I always had that question about the modes. And what I'm about to say, you know, I don't want to say it emphatically as a true, but it just seems to me to be so. That is, when we speak of the modes, we don't necessarily speak of them always as material conditioning modes. Like, for example, if you know, if modes are what makes someone Shudra, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or like that. But, you know, you can have a if we conceive of the modes like that. I'm just thinking out loud now. And I may give myself an answer as I'm thinking out loud. Like, for example, mode of passion is creation. Do transcendentalists never create anything? Doesn't the mode of ignorance, in terms of sleep, in terms of inactivity, it's there, you know, like you never get rid of it, you know. So, but when we speak of the modes in terms of influence, in terms of actualizing a conditioned nature, then those are the modes that condition in that way. But otherwise, you know, I don't see why the mode should be problematic or even pulling away from God.
Yeah. In one sense. On the other...
Because you see, just one more, and then, like what we have read here, every time the modes are mentioned, I have noticed this. Every time modes are mentioned, their evil effects are listed there. So what does that mean? If there's no these evil effects, then what kind of modes do we have? But we do have them, even with devotees. And when we speak of transcendence, it's something like anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavritam. It's not, as far as I understand the verse, a pure devotee is not rid of jnana karma and adi and other things, but they do not avritam, they do not envelop Krishna consciousness. In other words, they're being used in Krishna consciousness. It's like saying, and devotees do this. To me, this is a serious deviation. They when someone falls into this dualistic mentality, like computer. You can't. If you're a pure devotee, you don't have a computer. Well, is it? No, it's how I use it. Like what's my motivation? What's my relationship with it?
Yeah, but if you look a few verses back, when Krishna describes actually how a particular mode, when it's dominant, influences in what kind of activities, and then it becomes clear how. I mean, again, as you said, some things like the mode of passion is some impulse for action. Obviously, everybody is acting, even pure devotee. But here it's characterized by.
That's why I'm saying.
Kama.
That's why I'm saying that. Well, devotees are also kama, satya kama, for example.
Okay.
So just the word kama doesn't indicate anything.
But just listen. Desire, great endeavor, audacity.
None of that is evil so far.
Yeah, that's the point. Great endeavor, desire, audacity. Then, dissatisfaction even in gain. False pride, Adama.
Yeah, like pure devotee is never satisfied. He wants more and more for Krishna.
False pride, there is sometimes pride.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Now, false pride.
It's not false, but there's damba for sure. Yes.
Okay. Pride,
Yeah. Sometimes devotees. Pride of being a servant.
Yeah, why not?
And there's praying for material advancement. That's interesting. Yasha priti, loving the fame.
Yasha priti means loving the fame.
Loving to be glorified.
Yeah.
Rash eagerness to fight. Wow. A fondness for hearing oneself praised, the tendency to ridicule others, advertising one's own prowess, and justifying one's actions by one's strength are the qualities of the mode of passion. And then intolerant anger, stinginess, speaking without scriptural authority, violent hatred, living as a parasite, hypocrisy, chronic fatigue, quarrel, lamentation, delusion, unhappiness, depression, too much sleep, false expectations, fear and laziness constitute the major qualities of the mode of ignorance. And then, of course, the sattva is, shama, dhamma, tolerance and discrimination and etc.
But you see, again, when the modes are being referred to as something undesirable, something that's conditioning, then it tells us, like modes, but like this.
Yeah. These qualities.
Correct.
Right.
But we can obviously perceive the modes in capacities which are not conditioning like this.
Yeah, that's...
Anyhow, I never, it's a thought. Just something I noticed, but...
What I was thinking, well, obviously these qualities, the undesirable, when they manifest, they definitely are obstacles for devotional service. Because if you're like sleeping too much or quarrel, you're influenced to quarrel, then you may do offenses, and fatigue and hypocrisy, all these things, envy, anger. That's definitely, it's just, even delusion, which is also, delusion. Your mind is, you don't see clearly, and you can't think of Krishna. That's the problem. Difficult in that mode, just because the mind is it's instrument. So it's clouded.
It's a faculty, an instrument.
Can't really focus, or you're full of lust or something. Then again, we see that these the standard six enemies. Narottam Das Thakur says how he will use them.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
I think he doesn't only says about envy. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
He does an example, but for all the others, he lists how he will purify them and use them.
Yeah.
So it's not like cancel them. They don't exist. They will influence. Them.
Yeah. I find it that nearly every time teachings are presented in this dualistic manner, like either or, that's almost always, at least almost always, as far as I can tell, are presented just so that the beginner, and when I say beginner, means someone who hasn't constructed in their head the vision of rather a complex reality, And so, start with this, But as you progress, then you see that it's not a matter of duality.
Yeah.
Like anger, what's wrong with anger? Prabhupada was angry so many times, That's a dualistic picture, like anger is bad, composure is good. No. Depends.
Yeah, what kind of anger?
Yeah.
What's the reason?
Like anger by itself is a God-given thing. Like everything's God-given. Violence, that's what the hippies couldn't understand, had issues with the Bhagavad Gita, Like, why is exciting violence, Yeah. You got it. Love and peace, and it's a nice sentiment, but it's just a sentiment, It's a sentimental sentiment.
Exactly. Another thing is, it seems, as you said, that the more you're influenced by some mode, then it will continue exerting that influence. And it seems also the bodies, that's why, related to the varnas and particular proclivities you have by your conditioning, it's your body and mind somehow naturally dominated, or is that the body is like itself? Kind of, there's more tamas, for example. Somebody just
sleeps a lot,
or just likes to sleep, or whatever, or lamenting. Some people just they really lament all the time. It's part of their samvarasa.
They almost like have a giant bungee cord.
Yes.
You pull them away from it, and as soon as you let go, goes back to it.
So, I sometimes wonder where this, for example, because if these are undesirable, for example, like chronic fatigue. You can have some disease, but depression or something, it's always connected to something. But where this tamas comes, if our lifestyle is supposed to be sattvic, rising and doing this and taking bath, and we eat sattvic food, but still, tamas is coming. So where it comes from?
Well, obviously, as you were saying, that came to mind that it's obvious that we don't associate with the modes only in a gross way, like a gross physical contact with a particular quality, but we emotionally make the association, and by our desires we activate or actuate the modes like that, and then having been enjoying the life of a particular mode,
Yeah.
then the whole body, including the subtle body,
Yeah.
just functions that way. You feel that way, you know. Like, yeah. Well, yeah, more than a habit, you know. Way more than a habit. Way deeper.
Yeah.
Like the type of music you just enjoy, you know. And what do you call those flashbacks? Flashback,
Yeah.
you know, when you haven't done something in years, you know, and then you get a flashback, and the taste, you know, for a second you tasted that. Oh, that was good.
So devotee telling me after 30 years being devotee, he was like, I passed by, on the street they were doing this, whatever they call that, when you
Barbecue?
Barbecue. And then I had this smell, and suddenly a desire appears, you know.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh, she's really shocked, you know. It's normal, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
You always feel disgust. And suddenly, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, flashback, you know. Oh, this is nice.
You know, when I was, oh man, this is being recorded. Don't translate the following. When I was a teenager, I really liked the taste of beer. You know, I can't tell you, I loved it, you know. And then, of course, you know, once I started to actively participate in Krishna consciousness, I didn't drink beer occasionally. I'm joking.
Only no alcoholic, but with 0.5, which has something. I will also tell you a story.
No.
Not for recording. It's a recent one.
And so I haven't, you know, I didn't, obviously, you know, for decades didn't drink beer. And then I remember the feeling of drinking beer, you know, having seen a commercial or something like that on the highway, a billboard. And I thought, and I remember how I enjoyed, you know, like the taste, and well, especially when it was cold.
Cold.
Yeah. And then once we were on Harinam in San Diego, you know, and I don't know why, but I needed to go into a bar. Maybe we were putting those Shastradhana books or something like that, I can't remember. And I smelled beer. Man, that was horrible. Man, that was bad. I mean, once I even like smelled, you know, there was I was talking to a fellow, and he had a beer, and I really wanted to smell it, you know, and I smelled it, and it smelled horrible. I couldn't believe that I used to drink that stuff. So I got freed at least from that.
Yeah. Yeah, true. But sometimes devotees also say, you know, some flashback of a song comes, and sometimes I remember, I forgot who was telling like kind of a near-death experience in an accident, you know, and then like almost leaving the body, and then suddenly comes this song, you know, from teenage or whatever, some really some materialistic song, and then it's like, oops. Or some scenes, we never know. It was a sannyasi.
Oh, really?
I remember. Yeah, he was like saying, you know, you never know what comes.
I was told by a friend of mine, a Prabhupada disciple, he was riding in a cab with some sannyasis. They were going to the airport from Mayapur, and you know the road. It's like, you know, it's a gamble.
Yeah, it's a gamble. And the way they drive, it's really
yeah. You just don't know whether you're going to make it.
Yes.
And they got into a situation where they thought they were going to, you
That's
know.
it.
And one sannyasi started to pray the Christian, what do you call it, Hail Mary. It just came out of him.
At least it was not just something else. It was something related.
Not too shabby, but... And then later on, devotees, you know, they're all God brothers, you know, so they joke with him. And now we know where you're going to go.
He had some pies back then.
Sweet Jesus!
This is Jesus. It was one show Krishna was saying a devotee really badly cut himself in Irish. What's the Inish Rat? What was that?
Oh, Einish. Einish, something like that. Yeah.
Which is in Ireland.
Yeah.
So they had to go with a boat and to the hospital, and it was bleeding, and and then he was saying how he was just Krishna, and then Jesus, and then he just started swearing.
Degradation. Gradual. So first it was Krishna, then it was Jesus, then Mary, then swearing.
Mother, and then after that.
Oh, Krishna.
Last thing, something spiritual to say. Is I remember the verse where Krishna says, "Sagunan samatityanan." You actually become above the gunas by bhakti yoga, but avyabhicharana is uninterrupted.
Correct.
So I've done my rounds or something. One thing is external, the other thing is it's just tiny part, and in that tiny part, where is our mind, our emotions? So if we analyze, it's really, how can you claim I'm above the modes with really interrupted and not really focused devotional service?
Well, you see what devotees. I also think this is not just a deviation, but a terrible deviation to think that by practicing Krishna consciousness you ought to forget. But you ought not to forget. That's like it's not required to forget your experiences, but you have to see those experiences differently.
Yeah.
So, when you hear a song by Nina Simone or whatever, there's a super famous jazz artist. I don't know if you know her. I used to listen to jazz a lot when I was a teenager. Birds flying in the sky, you know what I mean. So, when you hear that, like, what do you see? What do you hear? Like a friend of mine who is not a devotee in a sense of, he never plugged into the institution, and he's like that. He's a lone wolf. And he's a very remarkable person. I hang out with him a lot. Well, a lot. A lot. I travel a lot. But whenever I get a chance, I like to hang out with him. He told me of his experience that whatever he would see and hear, he would experience transcendence. Because ultimately that's what it is. Everything's God's energy. You look at this picture, like this. What do you see when you look at this woman, or this puppy, or a picture of Krishna? What more you're seeing,
Yeah.
So again, that dualistic concept is like you got to cut something out. No, there's no cutting out. You just have to be conscious in the right way, not in the wrong way. There's nothing to be cut out.
Once we were playing volleyball on the beach with devotees, after Sankirtan, kind of relaxing, and it was nearby, and there was a beach pub, and they were playing. They play always something, and usually some really not nice stuff to hear, but this
a beach pub.
Beach pub, yeah, on the beach.
I heard pup. Puppy is a dog, puppy, pub,
They just sell some drinks over there. Anyway, the background music, and this particular time I remember, they have a collection of of Bulgarian, what they call pop songs, but they're particularly love songs. With lyrics from either famous Bulgarian poets, but they're just really like love songs. I mean, we play, you don't listen, it's just in the background, but you know these because in your childhood you always listen, and they're really famous songs, and I never listened to the text, I kind of didn't remember, but this time when we're playing, I kind of listened somehow my attention went, and I listened to these lyrics, and of course they're completely mundane and something, but I saw them in a completely different light. I mean, they provoked some feeling. I was remembering somehow rather in Krishna. It was really a very different experience. And of course, we know Mahaprabhu was singing that Mahan verse. To compare, the author makes something, with some mundane feeling, but actually the real.
Even if you just see the author in his mundane confusion, and you know that's ultimately divine confusion. I mean, everything comes from God, not divine in the sense that it's a confusion meant for Leela. No, not that one. Mahamaya, but Mahamaya is also divine. Everything comes from. So just by seeing that, you're rooted in reality. You're not under the influence of illusion. You're not wrong. You're right. That's a transcendental experience, in the sense that that's reality. That's a real reality. You're not confused about stuff. And if it inspires like divine feelings, that's a really some special experience. Yeah.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.